this is great. I like watching this, particularly because of the spheres of games that I encounter these days. This particular brand of game isn't the one that I'm rushing off to play lately. And so, therefore, it, in many ways, being sort of forced to re-engage with such a game constructively, it's kind of restored my interest.
Good.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of restored. I said, "Oh yeah, I used to like playing these, until I got sick of them, or there was a trend in them that got on my nerves, and or at least I just had enough. Just okay, yeah, I've been through it. I've made up the story, made up the world built, through all this, these methods and bits and pieces, under my skin and Annalise and this and that and the other. But that when it's grounded in, there's something I have to say about it. It's Annalise has that nice flip in system that I just mentioned, and this has the nice build of tokens that you don't know where it's going. It's going somewhere, and yet, and the more we have, the more we've got to work with where it's going, and that's cool. Last game drop, Kagamatsu. Are you familiar with Kagamatsu?
I haven't played it, but I know kind of what the game is about and the setup of the game.
Well, one of the mechanics is very powerful, which is that when a player who's playing one of the women of the village finishes out the scene with Kagamatsu, the Kagamatsu player assigns that woman on their hidden sheet points of either love or pity. And nobody else at the table knows which she got. And it is very important at the end that there's enough love at work there for Kagamatsu to get the weight he needs to fight the threat. If all the women did was engender pity all the way through, Kagamatsu and the village are screwed. So that one might think, well, isn't the player just gonna love everybody, and win the game? And the answer is no. There are other reasons why not. But the thing I'm trying to get at is that it's fun to play in the moment in Kagamatsu, just playing your gal and what she will or won't do with Kagamatsu and why. There's a lot of fun just doing that, particularly because the women are typically all rather different from one another, so it's a comparative activity as you're playing. But it's going somewhere. You know that those points are being scritchy scratched on the other side of that sheet, and you know that this is not for nothing. And Waiting Rooms has that quality, which I find quite compelling. That's why it's kind of that it's this is one of those things I talked about in the latest session with Justin. Over-engineering it would be bad. And a good example of that over-engineering is those cards that have the Moral Universe issues on them.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that's kind of a good example of that one issue. I think the latest one that I just put up, the latest session that I just did with him, is real strong on that topic.
Okay.
But right now, I think that you do have, playing in the moment about the character and learning about the character's background and, working through the rooms and stuff like that and learning the interactions that they may or may not have had with other characters, all that way through, being involved in that, you don't need anything except the knowledge that this is going somewhere.
Right.
As opposed to some particular mechanism that reminds you of it and formalizes it. That there will be plenty of that in a moment. And so I think it's real strong at that level.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool.
I guess one question that does come to mind, and I put it on my last playtest notes. I was wondering, with respect to how some of the questions get phrased, would it be better
right.
to start to start forcing relationships?
Right.
Like the way the latest version is. I mean, there's certainly plenty of questions that are talking about a character's relationship to somebody else. But right now, it's kind of left up to the player to decide with that other person that this question is asking about, do I want it to be one of the other characters around the table, or do I want it just to be some kind of NPC that I could talk about?
Well, there are several options. Let's go through the options. One is to have it be explicit, maybe even explicit on every card. Choose. Pick one of those. For this question, pick. Another option is to specify per card. This question is always about another player character, because you got this card, and it just is. Another option is instead to just not say. Just say another character and have it be not only a choice, but a gray choice. So that when they make the choice, they don't necessarily know that they've made it. The somewhat more extreme option, which is to have no player characters be involved, period, I think is not in the zone.
Yeah.
So those three are probably the range of options that you have. So I guess I'm trying to go procedural with asking about this. Which of these procedures seems the most productive? And that's a very good question. Your choice of verb may be instructive. It may be a coincidence and of no interest whatsoever, or it may be instructive. The verb you chose was force.
Mm-hmm.
You really want to force anybody into anything in this particular game? Doesn't seem to fit.
Right.
Again, the choice of verb may be irrelevant and coincidental, but just in case it wasn't, think about that.
Yeah.
The other thing that you noted is that what if they don't? And the answer to that question was, it was okay.
Mm-hmm.
Not having the option at all wouldn't be okay. So
correct.
Do people pick a perfect minimum, a beautiful minimum of character interactions if the choice is left gray? Or do they miss it if the choice is left gray? How much instruction is necessary here? You see, the reason I'm hesitant about like giving an explicit choice, or even in the rules saying whenever it says a character, it could be either, right? The reason I'm hesitant about that is because I think it front loads choosing a player character. You'll feel like you're leaving people out, or that there's a bunch of social dynamics kick in there that are not creative. And so therefore I'm trying to avoid that.
Right.
And that's why I'm trying to get, what is this about me and light touches with this game? I don't know. But yet again, the light touch seems called for, or at least worth considering.
Mm-hmm.
I could be wrong. Maybe this is one thing where a good solid hammer needs to come down and the card just freaking says. You say, this question is no good unless it's about a player character. Trouble is, if you say, who murdered you, pick another player character, the game just telescoped in its play possibilities
Correct.
You
Yeah, that's
know,
what I was
like
thinking. That,
hugely.
yeah. Whereas, yeah, if you leave it more gray, yeah, certainly the number of possibilities is
Hmm.
much more vast. Um, and I think part of it will come down to probably at the beginning of the game how the players are playing it.
Yeah, if we
Uh,
find out that we were the only four people in the lifeboat that was set adrift, from the spaceship,
yes.
and that's pretty extreme. But yeah, I agree. I mean, but it might be nice, for you to just let the setting do it. There was a school bus full of people, 25, 30, 40 people, and the four of us were on it. Or all we know is that we're on the same planet somehow,
Right.
somewhere. And I really liked what you talked about, that the players found ways in that one playtest to drift past one another in their stories. In Sorcerer, that's called crossing. And crosses are beautiful. It is remarkable how strong they are for people to seize upon as a decision making thing or not, so that there's more crosses than there are consequential crosses. And that has a naturalistic feel to
Yeah.
the story on its own that is very satisfying. We all know stories are contrived. This is a way for them not to feel contrived. And people are really, really good at that if you just let there be lots of crosses, but don't force them to be weaves. Let a cross become a weave when somebody decides to do so. Um, anyway, so those are some of my thoughts on that from the annals of sorcerer jargon.
Cool. Cool.
Have a good time. I'll talk to you later.
Good night.